Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, they're one game away. Manchester City, they'll win the Premier League title at the Etihad on Saturday if they beat their great rivals, Manchester United. Liverpool, they warm up for their Champions League quarter-final with City by beating Crystal Palace, but should Sadio Mane have been sent off at Selhurst Park? And Dele Alli's place in the England side, it's in jeopardy after he failed to start the internationals against Holland and Italy. First picks with us this morning, Oliver Holt. He's the chief sports writer at The Mail on Sunday. Oliver Kay is the chief football correspondent at The Times, and Neil Custis is the Manchester man for The Sun. Morning, guys. Thanks very much for coming in. Happy Easter.
Yes, and you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. Don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup, but the best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at some of the papers then. It'll be sweet. This is Vincent Kompany talking after City's win at Goodison Park against Everton last night. Sweet if they go on to win the title against United next Saturday at the Etihad. The edge of glory. Sterling scored yesterday for City in that 3-1 victory at Goodison Park. An excellent win for City. They're one game away from glory. Neil writes the headlines, I think, for the Daily Star. Much more like it. Neil was at Old Trafford yesterday to watch Manchester United beat Swansea. We're coming on to United and City straight away this morning. Back page of the People. Alley Oops, that story about Dele Alli with Steve Bates here saying he's no longer guaranteed to start England's World Cup opener on June the 18th against Tunisia. He didn't start either of the games against Italy and Holland over the international break. We'll come on to this in part two. Madio Badio Sadio, should he have been sent off at Selhurst Park yesterday for a second booking? That handball. Ollie was at the game as well as the Joshua fight last night. The Sunday Mirror, back page, West Ham United, finally. And a big win for David Moyes and his side yesterday at the London Stadium. They beat Southampton 3-0. It's the back page of the Express this morning. Neil Fizzler here. He says that Jack Wilshere is on his way. He's leaving Arsenal at the end of the season. Cannot agree a new contract at the Emirates. He will move on. And who will take him? We'll talk about Wilshere and his future in part 5 of today's programme. Just before we get going, actually, this morning, I'd just like to pass on my best wishes to Ray Wilkins and his family. Everybody here at the Sunday Supplement knows Ray extremely well, and of course, we hope to see him make a full and speedy recovery over the next few days. OK, let's move on. Ollie, you had the longest day ever yesterday, didn't you? Because you were at Selhurst Park to watch Liverpool and Crystal Palace. And then you hot-footed it down to Cardiff to watch the Joshua fight. You're back. You made it back about 4 o'clock this morning, and you're here, which, of course, we're grateful for. Thanks very much for coming in. Just a quick word, though, on your longest day and last night and Joshua's win. Yeah,
it was a long day, but it was a good day. And before any of the rest of you say it, I only do one day a week of live stuff, so I have to try and might as well cram it in. And no, it's great. It was actually a really good game at Selhurst Park. Wrong result as far as you're concerned, I know, but a really good game. And to see Salah score again, you know, the guy's been a phenomenon this season. And it was a decent fight. I feel a little bit sorry for Anthony Joshua because he's added another one of the heavyweight world title belts to his list, and yet the reaction from the crowd was rather underwhelming. Really, I think he set a very high bar for himself with some of the style of the finishes against Klitschko, for instance. So people seemed a little bit underwhelmed by the fight with Parker, but it was another good win for him. Yeah,
certainly was a big win. Luckily, we've got 3 heavyweights with us on the table this morning. OK, let's move on to events at the Etihad next Saturday. Let's set this up because we know City beat United. They are champions for the 3rd time in 7 years, Ollie. What would it mean to them to beat, if they go on to beat United at the Etihad to win a Premier League title? Will it mean any more to City and their supporters than any other title win?
I think, you know, you can't underestimate how much that first one meant, you know, the 2012 one and the circumstances in which they secured that at United's expense again, and that probably made it all the more satisfying for them. But this is 4 years since their last title. They're coming again. It's been an amazing season under Guardiola, and there was probably the possibility that it would feel a bit anticlimactic because it's been a procession for so long. But the fact that this Manchester derby has sort of been ringed in red or blue for months, it seemed like that could be the coronation day. And it would be a huge thing for City and their fans and for Guardiola and the players. But one thing is that the timing is rotten as far as City concerned. In that it's, you know, between those Champions League quarterfinals on a Wednesday and on a Tuesday, it's arguably the worst possible timing from that point of view. So I wouldn't take for granted that City would win next Saturday. I would expect him to rest a few players and maybe try and do it with a...
You think so, really?
Well, they've won the league. You know, there's no doubt they're going to win the league. There's no doubt they're going to win it by a huge distance. The Champions League will be, I mean, unless they've won 3-0 or 4-0 or something at Anfield in the first leg, the Champions League will be in the balance, and it's. I think it's hard to justify when you've got a Champions League quarter-final second leg 3 days later against Liverpool. It's hard to justify picking a full-strength team for all three of those games.
When you know you're going to win the Premier League title. Neil, is the rivalry between United and City as fierce as you've ever known it while you've worked in that area?
Yes, and I'm talking like on and off the pitch. You know, they even, you know, the commercial departments are always concerned about what each other's doing. It goes to that level, and you see in the spending. You know, I think one pushes the other one on though, and I think that it's good in a way for Manchester football, and for both clubs that both are at it in the way they are at the minute, because I think they almost inspire each other the way it's going. But it certainly heaps a huge amount of pressure on Manchester United, on Ed Woodward, on Jose Mourinho, both of whom I think have done a very good job, but it isn't seen that way because of what Manchester City are doing. And I think what this Manchester United team would be looked upon very differently if Pep Guardiola wasn't doing what he... If, you know, perhaps we had the Manuel Pellegrini second season instead of Pep Guardiola's second season, I think the Man United team would be looked at very differently. But it's looked at in comparison to, you know, the beautiful football that Manchester City play, whereas Man United, you know, carve out results like... not yesterday was different, yesterday was very good. They play it a very different way, and people find City easier on the eye. So City have certainly piled the pressure onto United rather than it being the other way around. But I do believe it'll be different next season. In
the build-up, OK, we've got the game first at Anfield, but beyond that, what will the build-up be about? Because if we go back to Old Trafford and the clash between the two sides, and then what happened in the tunnel and the dressing room areas after the game, will that play a part in the build-up? Will that affect either the manager? Will there be raised and enhanced tensions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I take what Ollie said about resting players and they don't need to win this one. Believe me, City are as intent on winning it against Manchester United. And I think Manchester United will also be inspired by the fact that although, you know, the best they're going to do is win an FA Cup and finish second, but to beat Manchester City on the day when they're ready for a party against their biggest rivals will really inspire Manchester United as well. And Manchester City haven't been playing this down. Vincent Kompany a couple of weeks ago described it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win a title in this way. Pep Guardiola was talking yesterday, I think, about it being the equivalent of Barcelona going to the Bernabeu and winning La Liga. So no one's playing this down in any way. I suspect Jose Mourinho might try to, but certainly at Manchester City they're not. So it's an enormous clash, and it's also, for United, I think, it will serve as a bit of a pointer towards next season if they can get a result, because this is what he's trying to do in these last 8 games, 7 or 8 games, is to, you know, serve notice that they are the second best, but they want to be the best, and they can take Manchester City on.
In terms of Mourinho's approach, I would expect him to talk about spending, talk about, you know, the fact that City have spent that bit more on players, and talk about what Guardiola inherited as opposed to, and he will be saying that, you know, back to his heritage remarks of a few weeks ago, he'll be talking about the fact that this will be, is it the 5th season on the run that City have finished above United? And it's rarely been a close thing, so it's not like it's just sort of happened overnight.
He'll be desperate to spoil the party as well. I mean, he's a master at that. I mean, you think particularly, I guess, of the Chelsea going to Liverpool, you know, and the Gerrard slip. He was the architect of that. And as Neil said, I think if United can take the gloss off City's title win, which they would a little bit if they win at the Etihad, and give themselves a boost going forward to next season. Because again, as Neil said, as far as United are concerned, it's all about next season now. Really, it's all about trying to establish some sort of a foothold and some sort of momentum going into next season.
Do you buy the argument, Ollie, that Mourinho in his programme notes yesterday said that Manchester United, that they're in transition, that they spent £300 million on players, and yes, they won the EFL Cup last season.
Yeah.
They won the Europa League, as he pointed out, for the first time in their history. I mean, they're not used to playing in it, of course.
Yeah.
The Community Shield at the start of the season against Leicester. But are Manchester United really in transition?
Yeah, I buy it up to a point. I mean, I think they are. You know, where did they finish? 6th last season. Yeah. So, again, as Neil has been saying, they have made it impossible to argue against the fact that they've made an improvement this season. It depends, again, how much you value the style that they play, but they have made an improvement. So, to a degree, I suppose they are in transition. It's a pretty expensive transition, and I think some people, myself included, would think that United fans are entitled to expect a little bit more on their return in terms of the gap that there is between them and Manchester City. I mean, I think it's been an improvement, but I still think it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment for Jose Mourinho that he's so far behind Manchester City, having spent so much money. And I think that the embarrassment of that has been the theme of the season for him, and is behind some of the ridiculous, pathetic comments he's been coming out with about Manchester United's heritage, as though they're some minor league club of some sort.
But a lot of the points he was making was spot on. I mean, all this stuff about they won 3 European Cups in 50 years, right? Now.
Yeah, that isn't exactly 2 in 9 years.
That isn't exactly sweeping the boards, is it? And in recent years, they have not been at the top table, and that was the point he was making.
Well, it depends what you want to say. In recent years, they qualified for the quarterfinals of the Champions League for something like 12 years out of 15 at one point. You know, this idea that they're some sleepy little backwater club. I think it's insulting to the fans, Neil. It suits Mourinho's agenda. I get that. And
what's his agenda?
His agenda is that this is a tiny little club that he's come into, and he's going to transform it into a Goliath of the game. But Manchester United, arguably the biggest club in the world.
At what point did he say they're a tiny little club? That's just nonsense. Well, that's your perception of that. If his words is ridiculous to say he has painted them as a tiny little club. He's not. He knows what a powerhouse they are and have been. What he's trying to say is this is the position that we're in at the moment, everybody. He's started at a very different level to what Guardiola started. Guardiola still has the basis of the side that he inherited, who are doing all the likes of Aguero, Silva, company when he plays and what have you. He started from a very different position, and what he had to unpick that Van Gaal had done with his philosophy and some of the bad players he bought. So he's just trying to say this is where we're at. Now, if you read his programme notes from yesterday, he talks about how, there's 18 teams behind us, but we want them just to be 19 teams behind us next season and beyond that, talking about getting the glory back and everything like that. So he's not trying to paint them as a sleepy little club.
You know they finished level on points this season before Guardiola and Mourinho turned up. I mean, this idea that City was this incredibly firm foundations that Guardiola inherited. Obviously, there are excellent players, Aguero, company, Silva, De Bruyne, that he inherited, but they'd finished level on points with Van Gaal's United the season before. United had won a title the year before. City have spent more since then, but City have spent so much better, and City look coached so much better.
Both of them.
Tottenham look coached so much better with a smaller budget.
7 points behind.
With a smaller budget. And if Mourinho wants to say, oh, City spent this much on players, well, Pochettino or even Klopp could say, well, United spent this much more than we do on players, and it's true.
Guardiola and Mourinho spent hundreds of millions each. Okay, so Guardiola's created. Neil will laugh. Guardiola's created a thing of beauty. I think most people accept that. That most neutrals love watching Manchester City play.
I agree.
Mourinho has created something functional, and that we're not saying that Manchester United are a bad side, but compared to Manchester City, they look functional, and that
the function being winning football matches.
Neil was making that point. Well, functional being 16 points behind behind their greatest rivals.
2 ahead of Liverpool, who are apparently one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. Yeah.
Liverpool's flaws are constantly pointed out.
Oh, are they? Who points them out?
Well,
every
time they concede a goal.
Revolutionary, amazing Liverpool, wonderful free
Are we going on to
the Anfield atmosphere?
Are we going on to Liverpool in
it looks like we have.
Yeah.
They haven't won the league for about 200 years.
Anyway, you're back to heritage again, aren't you?
And look at the money they spent. Look at the money they spent over the years.
Against modern heritage, all-time historical heritage against recent heritage. Liverpool's.
People just have a fixed idea. People want to knock Mourinho down. There's certain. I'm not saying you have an agenda. I sound like someone on Twitter here, but people have a fixed idea about Mourinho. Now, if you'd seen before that Seville game, right?
Do you think he might have anything to do with that?
Before that Seville game, don't interrupt, Oliver. Before that Seville game, there was that incredible comeback against Crystal Palace, comeback against Chelsea to win, brilliant performance against Liverpool. First half yesterday was excellent. Some of the football, some of the passing, Jesse Lingard was on a different level to anybody else around him. Now that. Who remember? Nobody talks about that. You still go back to the 0-0 draw at Anfield as the barometer for everything.
Well, I mean,
heaven forbid there's a clean sheet next Saturday.
I go back to that, Neil, because I think it was a seminal moment in the season. Because at that point, United and City were neck and neck. Liverpool were in as people would say, in a bad moment, and Mourinho had a chance to keep momentum going. Instead of which, United lost all momentum. It was a desperate performance, and it just seemed to sum up...
So what was Liverpool's performance like philosophy on the day?
It wasn't great, but that's what I mean. They
didn't take a risk.
No, it wasn't great. They were they were not at a great stage of the season.
He got a point. City didn't get a point when they went there.
No, I know, but City are 16 points clear of United. Unfortunately,
the turning point was...
We have to keep coming back. City are 16 points clear of United. There's no point...
I know you keep saying
there is no... Yeah, because it's true. And so there's no point you criticising City, because when it comes back to it, City are 16 points clear of United.
OK, Man United are second, so what are we going to say about everybody else?
Well, we're going to say that...
And that's all based on money, though, is it? But City's not all based on money, it's based on St Pep.
Well, yeah, but how much have United spent? United spent hundreds of millions of pounds too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So are you saying City are only top because they've spent money?
Well, that's part of the reason why they're top, obviously. But they, as I've said, what they've done with the money makes what Mourinho's done with the money look pretty ugly.
Look, there's no doubt that City are sensational and they're a joy to watch. And it's great to, I mean, I take my daughter along because she loves football to go and watch them when I can. Although the last game I took her to was the Chelsea one, and it was a balling. But they are a joy to watch. They are brilliant to watch. There's no doubt about it. But so I'm not criticising City. What they've done there is amazing, and what they're doing is amazing. And you look at the age of the players, and this isn't going to be a short-term thing. If they can, they're going to get better. I'm just saying the criticism of United is over the top.
But I also agree with you that Mourinho has improved United. I just think that going back to Ollie's point, I think that what we're talking about is two different scales of ambition here. And you look at the ambition that has gone into building the City side and what Guardiola has achieved, and you look at the lack of ambition, I'm talking about playing style now, of United, and it's chalk and cheese.
Lack of ambition.
Lack of ambition in terms of style and adventurousness.
What do you want them to? I mean.
If you look at the way United approached that game against Sevilla, and perceptions of United should not be shaped by the worst game of their season, but it was all about sort of pumping the ball forward, looking to play, win 50-50s, win the second ball. It was a performance that is, I mean, it doesn't even belong on the same scale to what Manchester City are trying to do under Guardiola. Guardiola at City is trying to create something that entertains, that suits his philosophy, and above all, it gets results. And it's when Ollie talks about that ambition, that aspiration to play amazing football and to get results playing amazing football, that is very, very different to what Mourinho was trying to do.
You can't argue with the Sevilla performance. I mean, it was just, both of them, both games, it was just unbelievable how poor it was. Against not a great side either.
Sure. Over the last few days, we've seen various Australian cricketers break down in public. Whether it's a good look or not, I don't know. David Warner, the latest, Steve Smith a couple of days ago. Next weekend, you can be on the back page of The Sun if Manchester United lose at the Etihad. You're going to be OK?
No, if
you're not going to be a blubbering wreck, are you?
Well, if Manchester...
I don't have to piece you back together.
If Manchester had to get a clean sheet, I think Ollie will be on the back of the Mail in a similar...
I fancy United to get a result next Saturday. For the reasons I mentioned at the start, I think City will not...
Look at body language. Immediately starts moving towards us. That's an extraordinary moment on this programme.
I think City... I don't think City will feel their strongest team. I know exactly what Neil's saying about how desperate they are to do it, but I don't think they'll play company for three games in 7 days. I don't think they'll play Aguero for 3 games in 7 days. And that is the game in which they would justifiably feel they can...
I don't think the level drops that much, though, if they don't play the strongest team, though, because they all play in such a pattern that people just slot in and out. And
yeah, well, they're certainly enjoying their football. They've got a smile on their face at the moment. They're looking forward to that game against Liverpool in the Champions League. That game, of course, on Wednesday night at Anfield. We'll talk to Ollie next about Liverpool's performance at Crystal Palace yesterday. Neil's been frantically calling the Lowry Hotel in Manchester during the break to get through to the presidential suite, but no answer as yet. I'm sure you'll get a call in the break. I'm sure you will. And a thank you as well. I would think that's the least he can do. Ollie, you were at Selhurst Park yesterday to watch Liverpool against Crystal Palace. And a big win for Jurgen Klopp and his side. Klopp went over to the supporters at the end, as you wrote about this morning in your match report. But Sadio Mane was one of the big talking points from that game. In your view, should he have been sent off?
Yeah, he should be. I mean, there's a debate about whether... So, it was a second yellow card.
Yeah.
His first yellow card was for an alleged dive, which I think was a contentious decision because I think he was caught by James McArthur. There was then a slight delay before he went down, so obviously sowed a doubt, I think, in Neil Swarbrick's mind, and he gave him a yellow card, which you can argue whether that was deserved or not. The second one, I found it bizarre that he wasn't given a yellow card. I mean, he was contesting a ball on the edge of his own box, fell over under pressure and picked the ball up. The referee hadn't blown for anything. Referee then did blow and gave the free kick to Palace for deliberate handball. So why he would not get a second yellow card for that is beyond me. I mean, I think it's just... Sadly, it's just rank bad refereeing, and I think in a week where we found out there aren't going to be any of our officials at the World Cup, it kind of shone rather a unforgiving light, I think, on the standard of officialdom, and it seemed like a pretty obvious and bad mistake.
Yeah. But
a very good result for Liverpool. Palace might have won on another day if Benteke had finished a couple of chances. I thought Palace played pretty well, actually. But
we'll go on to Liverpool's performance in a moment, Ollie. But just on Palace, did they look as though they've got enough to get out of trouble? Of course, it helped them yesterday that Southampton were beaten so convincingly by West Ham. That helped in terms of the context of yesterday's result. But have Palace got enough on what you saw yesterday? Yeah,
I think so. I think so, particularly if they can keep Zaha fit. If he can stay fit for the run-in, as you would know better than me, they've got a good run-in. They've got no teams in the top 6 to play. They've got a lot of the teams in and around them, so their fate is in their own hands. And I think they're plenty good enough to stay up. Yeah.
Liverpool's victory yesterday. How important was that in terms of momentum going into the game in the Champions League in the week, Ollie?
I think it was extremely important because Liverpool seem to be a team that are very, very reliant on momentum. They blow very hot and cold. Yeah. They're very streaky. They have a sort of dodgy spell each season, and you know they're well and truly out of that. I mean they had a couple of hiccups in January, Swansea and West Brom in the FA Cup, but the perform has been pretty consistent, and you know the European results as well, and you know they are going into that game with on Wednesday against City with extremely good momentum, but it's not as impressive as Man City's momentum, and they will be drawing in on the the Anfield factor, which I know viewers at home will be, but
not just at home.
No, but it will be something that they will look to capitalise on and look to exploit in the same way that Palace look to exploit their Homesdale
fanatics
factor at Selhurst Park.
Yeah, won 4 games at home.
Yeah. Well, 4 more than they might otherwise have done. Who knows?
That cauldron at Selhurst Park is so important, isn't it, to their survival chances?
Seems to be. I'm just looking at your home form at the moment.
How important? But you mentioned the atmosphere at Anfield. If I go back to the semi-final nights against Chelsea, I mean, that was hair standing on the back of your neck kind of stuff. How important is that atmosphere to Liverpool?
I genuinely think it is. I mean, I'm not saying I expect City to crumble in it, because you look at those players and they are masters at keeping the ball and being very, very calm and composed in the way they play. I don't imagine City being completely rattled by it. I never thought Chelsea were completely rattled by it back in those semi-finals. I think
they were unsettled by it. I think they were.
But I think what happened was that it, it's people would say it's the 12th man for Liverpool. But it was
Garcia's ghost goal.
But it was more. I think that it inspired Liverpool in those games to, probably covered up some of the flaws in that team, because it made them play with an intensity they might otherwise not have done. And
Neil made joke about the atmosphere at Liverpool, but that game we're talking about, that semi-final in 2005, was the best atmosphere I've been in the sort of Premier League era since Standing finished by a distance.
Yeah,
actually.
and then
did they play again in 07?
07 and 08, and then
so if
9 in the quarterfinal.
There are arguments about whether that atmosphere can still be generated at the new Anfield with the new stand, but if it can, I think it can be a huge factor, even for a team like Manchester City. Because I think what Ollie was saying, I think some of the Chelsea players, and they were experienced players, I think some of them were, and have said, I think, since that they were, unsettled by the intensity of the atmosphere.
Great teams, and Man City is a great team, just rise with an atmosphere like that. It will not affect them one iota. They rise to another level. Alex Ferguson used to love going into cauldrons like that, going into atmospheres like that, and winning, and showing the fans that it's not going to make any difference. I think the biggest factor, and I know the atmosphere at Anfield it can be incredible, particularly on nights like that, but I think the biggest factor will be on the referee. Now, the guy who has to be really strong is the referee, because every slight, not that City are a team that kick people off the park, I know, but every slight decision and everything, it's the referee, I think, in those situations who has the biggest influence on. But City will rise to that occasion just as much as Liverpool will.
Will the 4-3 have any influence, the first defeat of this Premier League season for City? Will that have any bearing, will that have any influence on the two clubs' approach, two managers' approach to this game?
I think the bearing will have it. It'll give Liverpool confidence to know they can do it, to know they can get the win. But on the overall tie, I don't see it. I just see a team in Manchester City that are so far ahead of the rest that if it was a one-off game, you'd give Liverpool a chance over 2. No. No.
So no chance?
No.
No.
Well, a chance, but not as big a chance as it would be on a one-off game or one-off afternoon. City are just too good, and I'm not just going forward, but defensively they've sorted out as well. The biggest thing that Guardiola did in the summer was change the goalkeeper. That's given so much more confidence to the whole back line, and that was the biggest. That's been the best thing he's done to that team.
Okay,
I think City will win. It's not exactly rocket.
On Wednesday, we're just over the 2 legs.
Over the two legs, and actually, I think that 4-3 might do them some favours, because it'll will have prepared them for...
Yeah, particularly as they were 4-1 down in that game at one stage, weren't they? Let's move on to Chelsea-Tottenham, because that game is at Stamford Bridge. You can watch that on Sky later on this afternoon. Ollie, you wrote about Tottenham in your column yesterday in The Times, and as we know, they move into their new stadium next season, but of course they want some of their best players and most important players tied down and locked down to long-term contracts, and that's one of the points that you made when you talked about some of those players. Will they do it?
I hope so. And Spurs fans, any time you mention it, Spurs fans will go, "Oh, you want all our players to be poached by. You want Harry Kane to be at Man United. You wanted Kyle Walker to go to Man City." I don't think anyone, apart from maybe a few Arsenal fans in the press, would want this Spurs team to break up. I think people like this Spurs team appreciate it.
Opposite, and desperate for it to stay together.
I don't think anyone who's reporting on football as a neutral wants to see all the best players concentrated at 2 or 3 clubs. They're already concentrated at 5 or 6 clubs with a few exceptions. But the idea that the press want this Spurs team to be broken up is a complete nonsense. I was just talking about the danger that some of those players do end up getting offered far more money to go elsewhere, and it's not realistic to think that they will always just put the Spurs project, Pochettino, the new stadium, ahead of financial concerns, because people don't in our industry, people don't in football, where they've got agents telling them what to do. And there are a lot of rumblings, just like this time last season, there are an awful lot of rumblings about discontent about pay structures at Tottenham, in agent circles and so on, and players entourages. There is a lot of discontent, so it's not the press making things up to sow confusion or chaos at Spurs ahead of a big game.
Also wake up with an agenda every morning.
The only time I see an agenda is when Neil posts his Instagram agenda of this show. But it is a concern, and Walker went last summer, and he was the only one. But there's the expectation that Rose will go this summer. Alderweireld, there are a lot of negative noises about that. Question marks about Dembele. That's before we even talk about any potential offers for Kane or potential offers for Ali or anything like that.
I mean, Ollie, what do we think Kyle Walker was on? He's on £180,000 a week at Manchester City as their first choice right back. What do we think he was on at Tottenham, and could he have made any other decision? Would anybody have made any other decision?
Certainly less than half of that. So not only has he doubled his money, but he's gone to a better team, and he's playing in. He's playing a really big role in a better team, and he's about to win. Well, he's won a trophy already. I interviewed him at the start of the season, actually, and he was saying, it makes me cry when I think that I'll never go back to Tottenham again. So it was, it's not something he did lightly. But then again, somebody offers you, right, you're going to be playing right back in Guardiola's team, where it's a dream as an attacking right back. You're going to be in a team that's going to be challenging for the title, which they're going to win the title. They've already won the League Cup. They're going to be in the Champions League quarter-final. And it's a no-brainer. And even though it's not like Spurs could look at that and say, well, look, the grass isn't always green. Look what's happened to Kyle. Arsene Wenger often says that about the players who've left Arsenal over the years, and say, the grass isn't greener, but the grass has turned out greener for Kyle Walker. And I think generally, if players are offered double the amount of money that they're going to be offered at one club, they'll almost always go.
Yeah. OK, Kyle Walker has had an outstanding season for Manchester City. Next up, we're going to talk our team of the year. We're going to pick our PFA team of the year. Let's see if Kyle Walker, the Manchester City right-back, makes it. Welcome back with us this morning, Oliver Holt, Oliver Kay and Neil Custis. Let's just remind you what's on the back page of the papers. The Mail on Sunday this morning, it'll be sweet. Vincent Kompany, after Manchester City won at Goodison Park last night, they know they can win the title if they beat Manchester United at the Etihad next Saturday. They are on the edge of glory. Raheem Sterling scoring for them yesterday in that win at Goodison Park. That's the back page of the Star this morning. Neil will be on the phone to the subs at the Sun after his match report this morning from Old Trafford. Second best. Can't be happy with that, Neil, can you? Well, you're raving about their performance.
I don't write the headlines.
When I to read it, I would have thought they'd been running away with the league. Lucky Mane, he could have got sent off yesterday. He did score for Liverpool in their 2-1 victory at Crystal Palace. West Ham United, finally. We'll talk about them in part 5. Neil's got a lot to say about the events yesterday at the London Stadium and the build-up to that game against Southampton. Dele Alli, alley-oops, his place in the England team in jeopardy. Before the World Cup, the opener, of course, against Tunisia in Russia on June the 18th. Inspired the brainchild of Danny Simpson posting his Team of the Year online earlier in the week. We're going to have a little discussion about that this morning. Neil, You did yours in the break. I think it was De Gea, Valencia, Lindelof, Bailly, Shaw, Jones.
Louis as a manager.
Manager of the year, Jose Mourinho, wasn't it? I think.
Well, certainly there's going to be no argument over the goalkeeper, is there? I mean, I can't be. I mean, De Gea yesterday again pulled off. I've not seen this very often, but he pulled off this double save. The first of which was just breathtaking. The ball comes back in, and he pulls off another save, and the whole ground rose. Everyone, you got a standing ovation from the whole ground for the two saves, and he's the greatest goalkeeper I've ever seen. He really is. He's
better than Schmeichel.
Yeah.
Neuer.
Yeah. Some of the saves he makes are just...
Nigel Martin.
are just incredible. I mean, so there can't be any argument over him. The way he commands the box, his distribution, but most of all, the spectacular saves that are worth trophies, points, everything. And, Manchester United fans are so thankful for that fax machine breaking. They should put it in the Old Trafford Museum when he was supposed to be going to Real Madrid, because...
heritage.
There you go.
Heritage.
OK. Any dissension?
The only argument against would be Ederson, who has been fantastic, but he's hardly had anything to do. And De Gea has bailed United out of a lot of games. I think the reason why United are comfortably above Liverpool and Spurs and Chelsea is the fact they've got a supreme goalkeeper. I'm not saying they would be behind them otherwise, but De Gea has been a difference of 2 points in matches, to been a difference of 3 points in matches. That game at Arsenal, for example, earlier this season, which is one of United's best wins of the season, De Gea was just astonishing. He people going about expected goals and all that kind of thing. He kept out numerous shots that day, which I think would have beaten any other goalkeeper in the league. I think he's easily the best. OK. Ollie, is it a clean sweep, De Gea?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I also think there's a case for Ederson, partly because of the way he's sort of epitomised this idea of playing out from the back, and I think you can see the influence of Guardiola, for instance, in Pickford's emergence as a serious contender to take over from Joe Hart, and the way that he played in Holland. But yeah, I'd go for De Gea.
OK, all right. We're going to mimic Simpson's team because he's picked 4-3-3. So let's go to the right back. If we bear the formation in mind, who's been the best right back in the division?
Well, I feel similarly strong as Neil does about De Gea, about Kyle Walker. I mean, I think I was sceptical, I have to say, when I heard that City were paying 53 million or whatever it was for him. I thought that was kind of money madness, but the market, it was just the market, and actually I think he has been absolutely outstanding, really outstanding. He's risen to that challenge, as Ollie was talking about him before. I mean, he's kicked on from Tottenham. I think he's been absolutely superb.
Okay. And Guardiola's made him a better player, there's no doubt about that. You're talking about the coaching of players, but he has really made him into a star. Yeah,
I would say Pochettino also made him into a better player, but he's straightforward for me. OK, so De Gea and Walker, we've got 9 to go. Centre-halves?
Stones and Bailly, I would pick. Eric Bailly.
He's been injured all year.
He hasn't been injured all year. But I just think, when he's fit, when he's not injured, I would put him in.
I would go for 2 completely different ones, Vertonghen and Ben Mee. I know Tarkowski seems to have got more of the headlines
and he's in Danny
at Burnley,
team.
and still not many headlines, but I would say Ben Mee has been the sort of unsung hero. And to be honest,
good shout, Ollie.
You could say Otamendi or somebody like that, but I'm desperately trying not to pick Man City players in every position. So I'd say in this position, I'll go for Ben Mee and Vertonghen. Yeah,
I'd also go for Vertonghen, but I'd like Neil, I'd say John Stones. I just like the way John Stones plays the game, and I know that he is still not the finished article, but I think he's
not in Man City's first choice 11 at
not at the moment, but. I don't care.
No.
So
I think he's a...
Clearly.
No, I like the way he plays. I like the way he plays the game. He's my idea of a modern defender. I know he has weaknesses. I think he's growing. I think he's a very courageous player.
OK. So I think it's 2 votes for Stones and 2 for Vertonghen, so...
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I can't argue with Vertonghen at all. I just...
OK. Left back?
I mean... He won't get in the team. I'm just making a case for not the obvious choice. No, not Rojo. For Young. For Ashley Young, because it's not just his defending. I just think he's, from dead ball situations and crossing from out wide, he's exceptional. He's almost had a renaissance in his career in the last sort of year.
Well, and commitment as well.
Yeah.
In terms of a player who's naturally a winger, a right-sided winger, who's been converted to a left-back, and he's fully committed to the position.
And I would start him for England as well, because I think his experience, and also, I mean, it's not just the defensively, but his distribution from dead ball situations, from positions out wide, is a real threat going forward.
OK.
I find myself completely indifferent to the choices at left back. It's a shame when we're going to get further forward and have to leave out some marvellous attacking talent, but that we've even got to pick a left back. But I don't know. I mean, Young is one, Ryan Bertrand is another, Andy Robertson at Liverpool's been very good, but only sort of the second half of the season. He didn't play much at the start. Alonso's been good, Ben Davies has been good, but honestly, I don't care any of that. Right. They're all good, but not outstanding.
A football writer without an opinion. I mean, this is the first.
No, but it's just, you know, they're much.
We must come more often.
I would say, well, but how concerned do you want me to be about, or partisan do you want me to be about left back in a team this season where there've been lots? I'll say Andy Robertson.
You're very passionate about Kyle Walker, but it's a left back. We're not interested in him. Ollie.
I'll say Andy Robertson. Go on, just to please you.
I think I agree with Neil that there's a really good case for Ashley Young. I think he's had a terrific season, but I would go for Andy Robertson. Again, I know he's not played the whole season. I think he started the season very well. He had then a hiatus, but he's come back into the team with style, and I think he's a terrific attacking player.
OK, so Andy Robertson gets the vote, gets the nod at left back. Danny Simpson's got 6 forwards in the 6 remaining positions, 3 across midfield: Sane, De Bruyne and Silva, Sterling, Kane and Salah up front. Let's go through the midfield now, 4-3-3, Neil. Who's in the centre of the park? Who's running the show?
De Bruyne.
OK.
De Bruyne.
Set up another one yesterday, didn't he?
Well, I mean, he's just a joy to watch. The passes he picks out, which you cannot... You know, you look at him on the ball and you're looking for the options, and he finds an option you just haven't seen, and certainly defenders haven't seen. He's the best passer of a ball in terms of opening up a defence in the country, and he's been, I mean, for me, he's Player of the Year.
De Bruyne, definitely, undoubtedly. And I don't know if we're doing position by position, but I would. Do you want a 3 midfielders now?
If we're going to play him in the centre, you can. Let's. We're going to complicate things. If we do that, we'll put De Bruyne in the centre. Should we agree on that? I think he'd be.
I think he'd be on the right of a 3. Actually, if we're going to complicate things.
Tactics board.
Yeah. I would have him on the right.
So I'd have De Bruyne too. Obviously.
OK, so that's 3 votes for De Bruyne. He's going to run the show in the centre of the park. Who are your other 2 midfielders?
Fernandinho and Silva. Which, you know, I'd love to, for variety's sake, just say, you know, somebody that wasn't a Manchester City player, but that midfield 3, individually and collectively, I think they've been on another level to anyone else in the Premier League this season.
I would agree with that, but I would give a case for Lingard playing an advanced attacking midfield role, or maybe as a number 10. Often overlooked when things like this come around. You know, I think he's seen as a bit of a joker or something like that. But he has been, I think, Manchester United's, alongside Lukaku, standout player this season.
Player.
And yesterday,
outfield player.
Yeah. Yes. And in the first half yesterday, he was just head and shoulders above everyone around him. I mean, really, really creative. I would have him in England's side ahead of Dele Alli as well. So there's an argument for him.
OK.
I think Neil's right about Lingard and Dele Alli. I think Lingard's moved ahead of Dele Alli in that pecking order for sure. I know we're going to get into whether this side is balanced. I find it hard to leave Christian Eriksen out of an 11, so I'd have him, and it's also impossible, I think, to leave David Silva out. So I'd have.
It's a pretty creative midfield.
It is, I accept that.
And Christian Eriksen, and we've still got 3 forwards to pick as well.
Yeah, has to play a beautiful game.
You have been outvoted here, Ollie. It's Fernandinho, De Bruyne, and you said De Bruyne, but Silva as well in our midfield. OK, the front 3.
just because I would go Kane, Aguero, Salah. Now, not everyone will put Aguero in, but for me, Aguero is the best buy from abroad to ever play in the Premier League, for the impact that he's had and for the goals he scores.
Thierry Henry?
And I think, I know.
Better than Thierry Henry?
Yeah, I think he stands above him. Because without Aguero, Manchester City would not have done what they've done in the last 7 years.
They would have played with 10, though, would they? They would have found someone else to play. Yeah,
but not as good as him. I mean, for me, he's the best foreign buyer that's come to this country in the Premier League era. Well, they didn't come before.
Bergkamp?
Yes, I'm saying he's the best. So you can run off as many names as you want. So
you thought them all through?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just in case you hadn't.
He's about it about a month ago. You should. But he just does it week in, week out, season in, season out. He's not. He doesn't cause any problems. There's never any controversy around him or anything like that. When Jesus came in last season, there was a challenge to him, and he rose to that challenge, and he came back and proved himself. So I think he. I would
he's not only in the team of the year. He's the best player ever to play in the Premier League from overseas.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
But not just for these goals, but because of the impact that he's had on an individual club in lifting that club to where they are now.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Right. So the three.
Sorry. Clarify. Your Kane, Aguero, and Sterling, was it?
Salah.
Very difficult. You've got five. I think you've got 5 outstanding candidates: Sterling, Sané, Salah, Aguero, Kane. It seems very harsh to leave any of them out, but I will go Kane, Salah, Sané. I think Sané. Enough has been said about Salah and Kane, I think, but I think Sané has been one of the most brilliant pieces of business. I won't say the best, best import ever, but he is arrived as a young player. Looked like he was taking a while to get used to it, and has just been sensational this season. He's just, his performance in the first half yesterday was just breathtaking, and I think he's that level week in, week out, really, under Guardiola.
And another one who's in his, how old is Sané? Is he 21 or 22?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to, that is the. Well, we're going back to City again, how wonderful they are, but that is the worry for everybody else, is some of the ages of these players, and how much long they're going to be at City and how much better they're going to become.
Okay. So Kane and Salah, 2 votes each so far, Ollie. You can swing it on the last one, on the last remaining position, though. It's down to you.
No, I'm not going to swing it, actually. I like the way that Raheem Sterling keeps proving people wrong and keeps taking steps up, and I think he's had an absolutely fantastic season, but I'd go for the same front 3 as Ollie, actually. I'd go for Salah, Sané and Kane.
Yeah, no Aguero.
Okay. How you can't have Aguero in that side, unbelievable.
It seems ridiculous not to have him in, and he hasn't. He's generally been not in the PFA team, which seems ridiculous given how good he's been for so long. But I'd say he's been in the top 2 strikers in the country every season. He's not. He's perhaps not been the top 1.
Okay. Straightforward manager of the year.
Mourinho.
Why did you laugh? He's overachieving, isn't he?
What you saying? You can't go beyond what Guardiola's done at City.
Guardiola.
But then if you go manager of the year, then I put Sean Dyche. Let's put Sean Dyche in charge.
You can't bring yourself to say it, can you?
What?
Guardiola. It's a tap-in for Guardiola. How many points clear of that?
He can't say his name. He's like...
Mancini. I put Mancini on.
It's not like, winning the title with 80 points or where... it's... What he's done is as a manager, as a coach, is brilliant. He's definitely Guardiola.
Yeah, sorry, Neil, but I think he's revolutionised the game in this country. He's taken it to another level in terms of club form. I think this title win is probably the most important, the most significant since Ferguson's first title for Manchester United. So, Guardiola, without question.
I agree, Guardiola, because, as I say, they despite all the japing and everything like that, they are an absolute joy to watch. And they're just, if they're in your town, you just want to go along and see it.
Yeah, you certainly do. OK, so confirmation of our team. I think it's De Gea, Walker, Stones, Vertonghen, Andy Robertson, left-back, Fernandinho, De Bruyne, Silva, Sane, Kane and Mo Salah. 37 goals for Mo Salah yesterday after scoring the winner yesterday at Palace. OK, next up, we're going to talk Dele Alli at England. Has he got a future? We'll talk about him next. Neil got a bit emotional during the break. He's a bit worried that we don't ask for any tweets anymore, which we do. If he'd been listening to the top of the show, he knows that we always ask. There's always an appeal for tweets. Why are you so worried about it?
No, I wasn't worried. I just wondered whether you'd stopped it because some of them were maybe a little bit abusive.
Yeah. Well, the abusive ones we don't publish. We don't roll those across the screen. But don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup or at N Custis.
No, don't, please. I've got a long journey home. All the trains are cancelled.
Got a long train journey home. Let's move on to Dele Alli then. Back page of the Sunday People this morning. Back page of the Sunday Mirror as well. Alley-oops, wayward Dele is blowing his World Cup chance. Didn't start the friendlies against Holland and, of course, against Italy. 22 minutes against Holland on the Friday night in Amsterdam, Ollie. Is he blowing it?
I don't know that he's blowing it so much as the fact that other people, and Jesse Lingard, obviously, who got a good talk up in the previous section, I think Jesse Lingard has emerged this season as not only a threat to Ali's place in the England team, but as a... Well, I think he's now a legitimate alternative. He seems to be Southgate's preferred choice in one of those one of those two attacking midfield roles. And the system has changed a bit, and it would involve playing in a slightly deeper role than Ali's used to playing in for Spurs. So I think I wouldn't go. I mean, Dele Alli had a poor start to the season, but I think it was slightly overblown. And he's been pretty good the last few months, but I think Lingard has been better, and Lingard would probably be the man you'd go for on form at the moment. I wouldn't get too worked up about the idea of Dele Alli's form being there rather than there, because I don't think any of these England players, with perhaps the exception of Harry Kane, are that good that you would fret if they're not at peak of their powers. I think they're fairly interchangeable. I think if you're going with a man in form, you don't go with Ali at the moment, you'd go with Lingard. I would
fret if Sterling wasn't available, because I think on the very biggest stage, I think he can be a threat and a difference. The thing with Lingard over Ali, apart from current form, is he's... and one plus that even Mourinho's biggest detractors might have is that the discipline within the players... certainly, dare I say it, defensively. I'll try and use a different word, just in case you overheat. But we're all about playing with freedom and all this sort of thing. But Lingard is a very disciplined player as well, as they all have to be under Mourinho. So while he can pull off pieces of magic, he doesn't forget the rest of his duties and what have you. So I think that is one of the reasons Southgate will lean to him as well.
Yeah, I mean. I think it's less about Dele Alli struggling and more about Lingard excelling. And Dele Alli will go to the World Cup. He's just, I think, at the moment, Lingard, through his own virtues and through his own form, deserves to be in the side ahead of him at the moment.
Is Ali's age relevant here? 21 years old. I was with Sam Wallace in the week, and he'd looked at some of England's greats from, say, the Beckham era, and Beckham only had sort of 6 caps at 23. I might be doing Sam a disservice with those stats, but it's along those lines. He was an inexperienced international player at the age of 23, and we're looking at Dele Alli at 21 and saying, "Come on, when are you going to start performing again?"
Yeah, well, it's an unforgiving environment, and he's, because of his age, you're right, he's going to have ups and downs and inconsistencies, and I think maybe that's what we're seeing. I mean, Lingard isn't massively experienced either, but at the moment his form is better, and I think Neil's right. I mean, under Mourinho has brought the best out of him for sure. I mean, he's one of the real big success stories, I think, of Mourinho's time there. I must admit, I got to the point with Lingard where I wasn't sure that he was going to cut it at that level, but he has proved me and people like me wrong spectacularly this season. And
for all the money that's been spent, he's the one who cost nothing.
Yeah.
Him and Rashford, and I think things like that shouldn't be overlooked. That that production line is still important, and it's almost. I think clubs take an awful lot of pride from that, and United have got an incredible. This is an incredible statistic of how many games they've now gone with a youth team product.
Thousands, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the subs bench.
On Dele Alli as an England player, I mean, I think it's 23 caps he's got now, and he's not really. I mean, his first few games were very, very good. There was that friendly against France where he scored that brilliant goal. And he's not really looked like the player he is at Tottenham. But I was in Belgium in the week and did their game and. Looking at Lukaku's record. Now, Lukaku, at the age of 24, is Belgium's all-time leading goal scorer. And he's got 33 goals or something like that. But he took until about 25 caps to really start scoring. And I think generally, these days, especially with England, where a lot of these players are getting into the England squad before they're really ready, before just because there aren't the alternatives, they're being fast-tracked, and it's going to inevitably take them time to adapt. And maybe when people have been sort of built up, put on a pedestal, winning Young Player of the Year, getting big contracts and so on, maybe that they think they've made it before they have. And I'm not saying that particularly of Dele Alli, but maybe we think they've made it before they have, and maybe we don't really expect people to have little ups and downs, and I don't think Dele Alli has yet done enough to suggest he should be a regular starter for England, but I don't think too many players have.
Sure.
Yet you've got to pick 11.
I think that there's so much talk about him because he is a talent, and there isn't that much talent around. I mean, you mentioned Beckham not having as many caps at that age, but the alternatives were so good, in that midfield. At that stage.
Okay. Andy Dunn's column, which is always a must-read, back page of back of the Sunday Mirror's sports pull out this morning. Reasons to be cheerful in terms of England ahead of the World Cup. One of them, I suspect, will agree with most of these points. Gareth Southgate's come up with a system that makes England enjoyable to watch. We've certainly come up with a system which we know about. They only scored one goal in each of their games against Holland and Italy, but. Andy suggests that the absence of Harry Kane might not be too catastrophic at the tournament. Jesse Lingard and Raheem Sterling putting a smile back on the face of England supporters. If Southgate can come up with a creative midfielder, we would be fancying England's chances. And Andy goes on to say, I mean, I've no chance here. He says, if you're an England fan not looking ahead, looking forward to the summer with more optimism, you're a curmudgeon.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I think Gareth Southgate is...
Let it begin.
Well, I think Gareth Southgate... Yeah, but there's no need to go overboard about it. But I think we can. I think we can afford to be slightly more optimistic about the way we'll play. I mean, I think Gareth Southgate is becoming more and more impressive as an England manager. I enjoyed the performance in Holland, particularly. I like the way we played. We've now got, partly as a result of the clubs that the players are playing at, I think we're more confident on the ball. We don't look like we're scared. A lot of our players don't look like we're scared of the ball, and I think we're moving forward. And there's an idea. There seems to be a cogent plan of how to play, which we haven't really been able to say an awful lot in the recent past. So I think things are moving forward, and there is more reason for optimism. I think this World Cup will come too early for a lot of our players, but I still think that there are grounds for optimism. Absolutely.
They always come too early or too late, don't they, World Cups? But it's I think one of the understated reasons to be optimistic is the draw. I mean, I think it's. I know we've been here before where we've been complacent about England getting a decent draw, but I really can't see them not getting out of that group. Tunisia, Panama and Belgium, whereas the last World Cup, going in there with a team that was in transition again, I just couldn't see them getting through it, and they didn't.
I went to see Panama last week against Denmark, and that game could be hilarious when England come to play them.
We said that about Iceland at Euro 2016, didn't we? Look how that turned out. OK, next up, we're going to go back to the Premier League. We're going to go back to the Premier League. Arsenal, they play Stoke City this afternoon at the Emirates. Jack Wilshere, will he play? Will he still be at Arsenal next season? We'll tell you next. OK, as we teed up about Jack Wilshere, let's have a chat about him. Back page of the Express this morning suggesting he's on his way out of Arsenal, Ollie. What does Wilshere do? They've offered him a new contract. He hasn't signed it yet. Suggestion there are one or two other clubs interested in him, including West Ham, Milan, Juventus, Everton, another name mentioned in the week. Stick or twist for Wilshere?
I could see why he would twist and go for a change of scenery and a change of luck and just a different environment. And it's, you know, if added to that, other clubs are offering him more money. And if Arsenal are maybe... I mean, Arsenal have been very loyal to him in terms of sticking with him through all his injuries. But he was told at the start of the season he could go. And he was loaned out the previous season. So he might not... His long-running attachment and sort of devotion to Arsenal might not be quite what it was. So if he's being offered more money and a change of scenery and a new challenge, and you've seen how Oxlade-Chamberlain, for example, has you know, improved and had a bit of a resurgence since going to Liverpool, I would think he would be... I would think most of the ingredients would point to Arsenal unless Arsenal make him feel more wanted. You
don't know what all the fuss is about, do you, with Jack Wilshere?
There seems to be an awful lot of it, isn't there? I mean, player might leave Arsenal. I mean, we're sort of starting to get a bit used to that, aren't we? And it just shows you where Arsenal are at, in that, you know, he's offered a new contract and he's not going to take it. And you mentioned the suitors there. I'd be stunned if he ends up at Juventus. But you might.
I'll ask. I'm there tomorrow.
Good. Well, Juventus.
I'll come back with an answer, yeah. They play Real Madrid on Tuesday in the Champions League. Wilshere, what does he do?
I think if he can get a move to, I mean, somewhere like AC Milan, like Neil, I'd be surprised if he went to Juventus. But I think he's a fabulous player, Wilshere, who obviously, as we all know, whose progress has been impeded by injuries. But I think when he's fit, he's a fabulous player. But he needs to be able to stay fit. And I just tend to think that a change of scene might do him good for all concerned. I'm not saying that he's gone stale at Arsenal, but I just think a fresh environment might rejuvenate him. If he can stay fit, I think he's one of the best English players around.
It looks like he's made that decision as well, doesn't it, to leave, bearing in mind the contract standoff and hiatus. You guys may not speak again in this programme because Neil wants to have his say on West Ham.
I don't. Well, in many ways I don't, because
We've got a lot of time to fill yet, Neil, so you have to say something.
I'm just rather sick of hearing about it. I mean, you know...
What are you sick of?
Well, all banging on about the ground and about... I mean, a colleague of ours who we all know and respect, Jonathan Overend, he was tweeting yesterday. He went to Upton, where Upton Park was, and a club ripped from its community, he said, and all this. And it's just week in, week out, banging on about the...
I wrote that piece, Neil. If you'd have read it a couple of weeks ago.
Well, Martin Samuel did a piece about it, saying it had long not been actually a West Ham community in terms of the fans that go there for quite some time, which was quite interesting. Look, I'm just West Ham are not as big a club as Newcastle, for example, right? But the attention on them and the coverage that they seem to get in all media is
disproportionate.
Yes, I think so. And we hear about them all the time, and I know Ollie bemoans the fact that they're now in this football ground and blames it on every ill that goes on the pitch because, you know, suddenly, I don't know, have the dimensions changed, have the goals got smaller? No, they haven't. They're just at a different, a different ground.
Even for you, you would have to be particularly obtuse to suggest that the move has not had any effect on the club as a whole. I mean, have you not seen any of the... You know, any of the unrest that it's spawned.
Why should fans invade the pitch and start fighting because they're at a different stadium?
I'm not saying they should invade the pitch and start fighting, but I think the West Ham move is a very interesting. You may be bored of it. You've got, you know, I might surmise you have a slightly short attention span, but you may have grown bored of this issue. I think it's a fascinating issue because it is part of the. It's part of the idea of a new generation of football grounds. It's the way football is moving on, and it's difficult for clubs to leave.
Do you remember anything
homes.
like this when Man City left Main Road, right, to go to the Etihad. I don't remember anything like this.
No.
And that was going to an athletic stadium that was being reshaped and what have you.
I miss Main
There
Road.
was a piece.
I went to where Main Road was earlier this week. I still miss it.
But there was a piece written about it for about a day or something like that, you know. But Man City, are Man City not as big a club as West Ham? I would suggest they are.
Yeah, of course they are.
But there wasn't all this hoopla about them leaving Main Road, was there?
Well, maybe because that was a smoother move. I mean, this, for various reasons, this has been a cursed, tortured move, hasn't it?
Why?
I think it's got something to do with the ownership. It's got something to do with the ownership trying to change the character of the club. It's an unpopular ownership. It's wrapped up in a move away from its roots, which the owners are trying to pretend isn't an issue. The stadium is not in a different way to what the Commonwealth Games Stadium was in Manchester. It was a fairly easy conversion to a football stadium. That stadium, you've been, I'm sure, but that stadium does not. It was a fantastic athletic stadium. Does not feel like a football stadium. The whole configuration of it is weird, and it doesn't feel like a stadium. It doesn't feel like a club's home.
I think there's a strange sort of split regarding West Ham in that West Ham's are branded as the Academy of Football, 1966, Trevor Brooking, Bobby Moore. I think that the new London Stadium, etc. And those things are all part of West Ham's history. But I think most football fans, they think of West Ham, think of the Chicken Run, Billy Bonds, Julian Dix, Paolo Di Canio. It's not a sort of polished, smooth image, and I don't think West Ham fans and football fans like to think of West Ham as polished and smooth and shiny. I think there's a sort of identity crisis at the heart of West Ham, and it's I think that probably came to a head a couple of weeks ago. But it's I haven't been there as an athletic stadium. I didn't think it was a very good athletic stadium. I thought it was an average athletic stadium, and I think it's an awful football stadium. And I hope it becomes a better football stadium. But it's but part of the attention on it is that it was such a sort of politically bodged move and transformation and legacy programme and all that kind of thing. So that's part of the attention.
I mean, they should have looked really at the history of clubs moving from their traditional homes to athletic stadiums. I mean, I'm talking around Europe. I mean, Juventus was that Stadio Dele Alli was the most soulless place you'll ever go to. Yeah. I was always stunned the first time. I was always stunned the first time I went to see Bayern Munich at how awful the atmosphere was there and how far away from the pitch you were. And so I do have sympathy with West Ham fans in that sense, in that the atmosphere at Upton Park that they had at Upton Park, certainly on good nights, is totally gone.
Yeah, sure. OK, guys, we're out of time, unfortunately. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much to the guys for joining us this morning. Thanks very much to Ollie, and to Neil. See you again soon. Have a safe trip back to Manchester. I know it's going to be a tough one.